Okay. We are going to try to broadcast tonight. Well, over here. We're going to try to broadcast tonight. We did a puja to the gods of. Internet. My disciple may have advertised the class for later. I'm not sure. So we have a class which I'm not prepared for because I don't have my computer with me because we're out doing a program, and I thought I would be back home in time, but we're not back home, and consequently I don't have my computer. So we were still continuing on the topic of self-love, self-envy, and I was going to read some quotes from Prabhupada about self-love and self-envy that we didn't have a chance to finish reading in the last class, but I don't have the computer. And so, if you have questions on this topic, then why don't we just deal with questions? Excuse me. I mean, I could speak, but most likely, if I speak, I might end up speaking about what we already spoke about. It's okay. So, yeah. I'm going to close the door. So, yeah. So, if you have questions, I mean, I can speak because I don't have what we're reading from. I can speak, but it may. Do you have any questions? And why you hate yourself? We've been. You sit over here if you want. We've been talking about why anybody would hate themselves. Doesn't make any sense. I think why someone would hate themselves. Partial reason is because very much influenced by the mode of ignorance. It's just an unhealthy psychology. But another reason is one has been made to feel useless. And yeah, oh yeah, you're in the video. You have to move over. One has been made to feel useless or worthless. And one of the things it shows is that you've probably heard these stories of children who weren't given any affection. It was actually a very demoniac experiment where young babies died because nurses who nursed them were instructed not to touch them or touch them as little as possible, and they actually died. So it shows that we all thrive on affection. And we all thrived on Prabhupada's affection. And we saw how dedicated he was. Now he sacrificed so much for us. And although it wasn't as we felt Prabhupada's sacrifice to all of us in general. And so we felt very cared for and loved spiritually. It's something that we were all hankering for. And so that's natural. So that's the way we're created. Even Krishna. Even Krishna, you can say, yeah, does he have self-esteem issues? Well, he wants to be loved, that's for sure. Krishna thrives on love, and because we're created like Krishna, we thrive on love. Of course, is that, however this happens to an individual, it's not logical. It's just happened. It's not like they're intellectualizing it. Well, my mother this, my father that, then my teacher this, my priest this, then my friends abused me in this way, and here's the equation, and this is why I have this belief about myself. It doesn't work that way. It's usually subtle. We're not even so conscious. Attitude in a situation. So, yeah. Anyway, I don't know how much you're hearing or seeing as this is going off and on, and I have a feeling it's going to continue to go off and on. Because although we're in one of the most powerful countries in the world, maybe the universe, their internet is not powerful. They're lagging behind. So, so this is important. A lot of times we may be not succeeding. There's something that's limiting us, and we're not succeeding even though we have the material ability to succeed. And it's probably because of the way we see ourselves. And the way we see ourselves then dictates how we act. And there was one man, he said that he had some issue with his father. And he said he was always trying to prove himself because his father kind of made him feel down. He was always trying to prove himself, and he started a business. And the business was becoming very successful. And he realized that subconsciously he held the business back because he had been programmed to think he's not as good as his father. And he would almost be like, I think he said something like, I felt like I'd be offending my father if I succeeded in my business more than he succeeded in his business. Isn't that strange? Now another thing that's really strange is that if I have a negative conception about my ability to be Krishna conscious, like I don't think I'm very Krishna conscious. I don't think I can be. I don't think I will be. I really don't think I deserve to be. You may not realize how powerful those negative statements are. Because if I don't really think I can be or deserve to be or am really worthy of Krishna's mercy and so forth, then that certainly is going to affect the effort I make to be Krishna conscious. And as I was saying before, your efforts, your actions tend to mimic your beliefs and your self-awareness. So if my awareness is that I can't be Krishna conscious, for whatever reason, and in this case it could be a self-esteem, because I don't deserve it, or I'm not good enough to be, or why would Krishna even want me? Like if I go back to Godhead, like that's going to ruin everything, and everyone's going to go, get out of here. If that's the way you think, then obviously, why would you try? Why would you try to go back to Godhead? Like you wouldn't, would you? As again I said, it's very subtle. So you may not even know you have the belief, or you may know you have the belief, but you may not realize how much it affects your behavior. Like sometimes we're not trying hard in Krishna consciousness. And why? Why are we not trying hard? Because we might think, well, I don't really deserve Krishna's mercy. Or I'm really, I'm not really such a great person that it really matters whether I be Krishna conscious or not. So why should I really try? Because it doesn't really matter. That's all low self-esteem. Now it's playing out in my sadhana. That's very unfortunate. And we're not aware that it's playing out in our sadhana. One devotee wrote me today and said, my sadhana is bad. I'm very weak in sadhana. And my response is, why don't you care about yourself? Why don't you care about this? Because when I read someone saying, I'm not applying myself in sadhana, I'm not chanting my rounds, I took initiation 6 months ago, but I stopped chanting. One of the things that strikes me at least from my perspective, is why don't you care about yourself? Like, what's wrong? You don't care that you're not doing this? It doesn't bother you? And someone might say, no, it doesn't bother me. And I would think, it doesn't bother you because maybe you think you're not worth it, you don't deserve it. So that's why it doesn't bother you. So that's unfortunate, isn't it? Oops, excuse me. Yeah, so that's where an unhealthy psychology undermines our Krishna conscious practice. Whenever we say these words, I don't care about something that is extremely important or extremely beneficial for us, especially say I don't care, I didn't finish my rounds and I don't care, I broke this principle and I don't care, I haven't read Prabhupada's books in weeks and I don't care. Whenever you say something like that, if you do, then ask yourself, is this a symptom of the fact that I don't really care about myself? Now, if you say, well, I do care about my health, I do care about my career, I do care about my marriage, I do care about my kids, so that means then it's probably just a spiritual weakness. But if it's kind of pervasive, then it can be, at least you can consider, that it's a self-esteem issue. That you just don't care enough about yourself to care enough about anything that would really be good for you. Right? I mean, I was often thinking that, when we don't eat well, we harm our body, and then that means we're not, don't we care? You don't care you're eating something that's bad for you. Okay, I know it tastes good, and we kind of think we're loving ourselves because it tastes good, but on a deeper level, if we want to improve ourselves, it seems from my study of this topic, there has to be a sufficient level of caring, self-care, concern about myself to do the austerity of improving myself, or to, in this case, do the austerity of controlling my eating, or do the austerity of getting up early, or doing the austerity of 16 rounds, even I don't want to do it. But if I care enough about myself, I would do it. So that's something to consider if you find yourself weak in sadhana. Ask the question, is it because I just don't care? Oh, whatever, I'll take another birth, I don't really care. That's not the right attitude. I mean, it may be the real attitude that just may be real for you. You don't actually care. But then the question is, look into the reason you don't care. Is the reason you don't care that is the reason you don't care that you don't actually care? However strange that sounds. But is that the reason? Yeah. I have a strange feeling that Guru Nishta advertised his class for an hour later, because hardly anyone's showing up. And we've been doing it at this time for the last few weeks. So I didn't tell her this time, and I was assuming she would know. But apparently not. And everybody's going to come on at when it's time to finish the class. So that's unfortunate. And if we do class tomorrow, it's also going to be at this time. As long as I'm in this part of the world, it will be at this time. After December 18th, I go to China, and then we'll go back to our regular time, which should be an hour later. Do you have any questions?
Nothing coming up.
Okay.
Right now.
So let me emphasize the point that a lot of this is subtle, which means we're not aware of it, or we're not aware of it to the degree that excuse me, that we're not aware to what degree it's affecting us. So number one, we may not be aware that we're lacking sufficient self-compassion, that we actually may be envious of ourselves, and that we're not aware of how that's affecting us. Whoa, excuse me, I'm in an awkward situation here. We are all in awkward situations in this world, but I'm in a really awkward one right now. Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah. So, let me put this up a little bit. So we have spoken about this before, that if we lack a sufficient degree of self-love, we will do things that are either damaging or at least not completely. I just sometimes it's just I don't care enough. So self-care is important. Because self-care can inspire you to do something which maybe you haven't yet been able to do, or do it better, or do more of it. Yeah, like for example, a lot of times we find devotees are not reading Prabhupada's books enough, and or just not giving enough attention to their sadhana. And the devotees that do give attention to their sadhana, in general, if not always, I estimate as people who actually have sufficient sense of taking care of themselves, have a sufficient level of self-care. They're very careful to have time for sadhana. They're very careful to chant their rounds nicely in a nice place. They're very careful to be able to study on a regular basis. If due to traveling or preaching or service they miss some study, they'll make it up. They'll take off a day and go hide in a closet, hide in a treehouse. They'll do something, and they'll hear and chant. They'll nourish themselves. So that's a very important aspect of Krishna consciousness, is self-nourishment, because as conditioned souls we need sufficient self-nourishment to be strong. And so any devotee who's strong in Krishna consciousness, you will notice that they do take very good care of themselves spiritually. That's a definite fact. And one who doesn't will not be strong. And what nourishes you may be a little different than what nourishes me. Maybe what nourishes you is to learn a lot of shlokas. What nourishes me is to study philosophy. What nourishes him is to study lila. What nourishes him is to study more esoteric aspects of our philosophy. What nourishes him is deity worship. But those devotees who are doing well in Krishna consciousness, they definitely take sufficient time to do those things that nourish themselves, and of course do things which are necessary also. King Shuk, I am arriving in Calcutta December 18th. and then going to Mayapur. So hopefully we'll see you. I spent a lot of time in Mayapur, so we have devotees there that I used to see every week, who I haven't seen since April. I left in April. Yeah, so it's a long time. April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Yeah, wow. 8 months. That's the longest I've been out of Mayapur in years. So this is something you've probably observed. I've observed it also. Any devotee who is very Krishna conscious, they have some regimen where they're very strict about whatever it is, a sufficient amount of reading, a sufficient amount of temple worship, of service, of sharing Krishna consciousness. And if we get more of it, we do better. If we get worse. So just look at sadhana in a sense like a mathematical equation. I think maybe we finished reading them last week. So, to be watched. Like if you're in intensive care. So sadhana it's a regimen which guarantees a certain level of Krishna consciousness. Okay, let's use another example. Exercise. You do exercise every day, it's a guarantee of a certain level of health. You'll build your muscles and so forth. If you don't do it regularly, you'll see the results. If you do it more, you'll get bigger results faster. You practice an instrument. The more you practice properly, the sooner you become proficient. So it's the same as sadhana. So whenever we're minimizing sadhana, we're actually minimizing our own Krishna consciousness. And I understand circumstantially that happens. I understand it well as I travel. But like tomorrow, we will leave about 8:30, I think, maybe earlier, 8 o'clock to do a program. And then we'll do the program, and that will go to 1 or 2, then we'll take prasadam. So maybe 3 or 4, I'll get back to where I'm going to be staying. And I'm not going to have much sadhana in the morning. So that happens sometimes. But as I was saying before, we should want to accommodate. If we lose time, then make it up another time. But the real issue that we've been talking about here is that if the sadhana is compromised because I just don't care, that's the danger. If circumstantially you have to go to work and this and that, you adjust as best you can. But if you're compromising because you just don't care, that is something to be very concerned about. And all